Football is here, and it's finally back. We have the Hall of Fame game. Which players for the Chicago Bears and the Houston Texans that you need to be paying attention to? We could discuss this and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parsons. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I'm a senior draft analyst, and thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. You know I got to kick the intro to Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at The Talent Code. You talk to him, baby.
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, 2019 national champ, man, and the other side to this dynamic duo that we like to call the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to start this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. Every like, every subscription, every comment is greatly appreciated over here at the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. DP. Talking about this Hall of Fame game, man. We have the Chicago Bears playing the Houston Texans. So we're going to give the Chicago Bears players to watch. Then we're going to go through the Houston Texans players to watch. And then simply, should starters play in the Hall of Fame game? We know they removed a preseason game. So, but for the Chicago Bears and the Houston Texans, this gives them 4 preseason games because they have to play the extra Hall of Fame game. But should starters play in the Hall of Fame game? I think we're going to have a rather interesting conversation. So if I was you guys, I would stay tuned in the entire show. But DP, before we get this thing started, why don't you hit with our title sponsor?
Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Chicago Bears players that people need to be aware of, Keith. Of course, like you said, the starters aren't playing, and we're gonna talk about that in the third segment. You know, I'm not the happiest about that as a football fan, but Tyson Bagent, a guy who started 4 games when Justin Fields got hurt in 2023, he went 2 for 2. I think the game that got him, put him back on the bench was against the Saints, where he had just those rookie mistakes, like he, flushed out the pocket. I think Cam Jordan was on his back, like pressure was getting to him, and he was just trying to get the ball away. And you just saw D3 school quarterback and prospect out of Shepherd, a guy we didn't know much about until we got to the Senior Bowl, or we were on the conference call with Jim Nagy that January of 2023. He's talking about this kid, right? So for him, I think he's supposed to play majority of this game, Keith, for the Chicago Bears at quarterback, with Caleb Williams not starting until more than likely next week. I think there's a big opportunity for him, and not just so much with this team, because we know what the status is. It's Caleb Williams' team, right? But at the same time, the quarterback is like a revolving door at a mall. It's people going through it all the time. So while, yes, you're the QB2 here, if you show enough strides, you take enough steps, right? Somebody could look at you and say, you know what? We may not be ready for a rookie quarterback right now, but you could be our placeholder until we are ready.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And that's what you're kind of fighting for. And I think Tyson should do well in this situation because Caleb Williams I always say this, I like my backup quarterback to kind of have a similar skill set, not talent-wise, and they're obviously, because then he maybe wouldn't be the backup, right? But as far as their let's say this, their athletic profile to be similar, because you look at a team like the Baltimore Ravens, right? If you have a Lamar Jackson and then you go from Lamar Jackson to the backup quarterback is Ryan Fitzpatrick. That's a totally different offense stylistically that you have to run if something happens to Lamar Jackson, right? But if you have Lamar Jackson and then you have Tyrod Taylor or something like that, right? Then now you can keep some of those same intricacies within your offense, right? And you don't have to totally scrap an entire part of your offense because one guy does something that the other guy can't do. And the thing for the Bears is that Tyson Bagent is a fairly mobile quarterback. He has a decent arm, right? And then now you can call those rollouts and those different things, and he's somewhat of a gamer. So I think he is a good situation for a backup guy, and I think him playing backup right now, but we've seen that. And then I don't know what I know what the ceiling is from what I watched on film in college, right? And then someone was NFL. But as far as him just being a gamer and how he's able to prolong his career, very important for Tyson Bagents. But DP, I have to go to this wide receiver core, man. I want to talk about this wide receiver core. DJ Moore got his big money, right? They traded for Keenan Allen and they drafted Rome Odunze. So quickly, very, very quickly, there's two important guys on this team that's saying, you know what? We thought this was a good situation. This is not great right now, and they need to value every single rep. And that is Tyler Scott, right, the wide receiver from Cincinnati, and then that is Velus Jones, the wide receiver from Tennessee. Two guys who essentially may be fighting. I don't want to say they're fighting for roster spots, right, but they're definitely fighting for any type of playing time because you have a big three, right, at the end of the day, and not like a big three that the Chicago Bears are heavily invested in. And then when you add in the running game, then you add in Cole Kmet, then it's like, where do I get my burn? So you have to put yourself in a situation with these games, DP, to play high level reps and build out a niche for yourself. Velus Jones came out of Tennessee. What he was that vertical guy. Vertical field stretcher, speed, things like that. So you want to do this now to where when you get week 4, week 5 of the game of the season, and the Chicago Bears need a deep shot, and they're like, man, let's try to take a deep shot to Velus Jones, right? So even if you play 20 snaps, it's one valuable snap that can show what you can do. And insane for Tyler Scott, right? You have to go out there and make some things happen. So I look at this wide receiver core offensively, DP, and said it is very important for those two guys.
No, 100%, Keith, because at the end of the day, you're going to need depth guys behind your starters. And like you said, even with Velus Jones, he came out, that explosive guy, that gadget guy, the guy you want to just get the ball in his hands. He had that return ability. And that's always fair, especially with this new dynamic kick return that they've adopted from the UFL.
That'd be huge for Tyler Scott.
For Tyler Scott and Velus Jones, like, man, if you can go out there and make plays on special teams, that's how you secure a 53-man roster spot, right? Because at the end of the day, and I think reports out of camp were that both guys were making plays, you know what I mean, in this offense with Shane Waldron calling the plays now and everything, and with Luke Getsy being in Las Vegas with the Raiders. So I'm excited to see both of those guys. Hopefully they both get enough burn and play time and snap share during this game, this exhibition game, where they can kind of showcase. At the end of the day, you want to showcase to all 32 teams, not just your own team. But if there's any chance a team says, listen, we need help, right? Like the Pittsburgh Steelers, have Roman Wilson and George Pickens and Calvin Austin, but it's still some question marks, right? They might need another playmaker. The New England Patriots might need another playmaker. Some of these older veterans don't cut it, or they get cut from camp. So I think that'd be a big thing. Keith, I gotta go to the trenches for the Chicago Bears too, real quick.
Yep.
Jatari Carter, a guy that we saw
out of
HBCU at the combine, not the combine, at the Senior Bowl in 2023, a guy that showcased himself pretty well. At the end of the day, we know if there's one position in football that you kind of almost bank on at least one person getting hurt, it's the O-line, because it's so many bodies in a condensed, confined area. It's easy to get an ankle rolled up on, to have somebody take your knee out, and now you're out for a couple weeks with a quad, a hamstring, anything, concussions, whatever. Like, so Jatari Carter going out there, getting the opportunity to start and playing enough snaps to prove himself and showcase himself well. That's going to be a big thing for him, Keith. I think that I'm gonna be watching out for in this offensive line.
Yeah, I agree. And he went to Southern University, which is in Baton Rouge in Louisiana. So that, it's part of like where you just continue to produce really, good football players at the end of the day out here. And that's just how it goes, right? If you're from Louisiana or you play football in Louisiana, you're a pretty good football player. That's what we do, DP.
And I forgot. We can't forget about the real quick. Can't forget about the defense side of the ball. Dominique Robinson, the guy that converted receiver to defensive end. This is a big season for him, right? Can you give them some reason to put you and give you more snaps? He's physically gifted, athletic, strong kid, but he going from receiver to defensive end. That's a culture shock in terms of.
I just hope he's working out with Montez Sweat also, right? Like just getting after it with him, because probably very similar frames. Well, yeah. I guess as far as arm length, right? Like very similar length. And then now he just has to put on the weight.
He's 6'5", 253. Like big kid, so big young man.
Huge.
Like I said, I'm with you. I'm with you.
Uh,
Austin Booker, they drafted him late,
yeah,
and this is a guy we liked.
another lengthy edge rusher that I say go work out with Montez Sweat. Go figure that thing out, right? Go figure it out. But DP,
Absolutely.
let's keep this thing going and flowing, man. We have to talk about one of the hottest teams in the AFC. That is the Houston Texans, man. Which guy should we be watching in this Hall of Fame game? We're gonna talk about that coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace for Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. And guys, as the fact that the summer is almost over, right? We're into the month of August. Why not take these last couple days or weeks before school and take your family to your local or your favorite MLB ballpark, right? And let Gametime help you, because you can take the guesswork out of buying those MLB tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. The Houston Texans, players to watch during the 2024 Hall of Fame game. We know the starters aren't playing. No Stroud, no Stephon Diggs, none of those guys. Keith, I hope to see our guy Xavier Hutchinson. I expect to see our guy Xavier Hutchinson.
We got to see him, DP. We got to get some visuals on him, man.
And he's been, I remember watching the clip from camp where Stephon Diggs was talking to him and I think it was John Mechie about route running, kind of teaching them stems and how to break and communicating with them and just passing on that veteran knowledge, right? So for Xavier Hutchinson, like, this is a big opportunity, because at the end of the day, Stephon Diggs is on essentially a 1-year deal, right? Noah Brown, solid production last year. Robert Woods, wily veteran, right? So at the end of the day, this team will still run with four young wide receivers if you can show them enough to during the preseason to take that step going into not so much setting yourself up in 2024, but 2025, right? When Stephon Diggs walks off in the free agency and they don't bring him back, you know what I mean? That's fine, because then it'll be you, Mechie, Tank Dell, and Nico Collins, all 4 young playmakers to go with the young playmaker at quarterback. I think Xavier Hutchinson, just go out there and play your game, and do what we saw on tape, right? We love this tape coming out of college with Iowa State. Like, we love this tape.
I did. I liked him a lot, DP. You know, he was a guy, I think I gave him like a late second, early third, I believe, 2 years in a row, because I thought that he was coming out and then he came back one more time. But I'm looking at that conversation, DP, and this is the conversation that kind of needs to be had, right? Is that they have Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, Tank Dell. That's 3. Robert Woods, Noah Brown, John Mechie. That's 6. Then you get to Xavier Hutchinson. That's 7. Quintez Cephas, Ben Skoranek. DP, that's notable guys. This trade situation, right? Like, when you look at just all of these draft picks, you know, we talked about John Mechie potentially with the Carolina Panthers because of the link to Bryce Young. But I'm thinking about even with Xavier Hutchinson, right? Is that a reason to go out, ball out? And so that way, hey, maybe I'm wide receiver 4 or 5 here, but I could be wide receiver 3 somewhere else, right? Because we know that every wide receiver core is not balanced. They have injuries, right? You think about the situation that just happened with I think Roman Wilson. I seen that he had to get carted off. And as teams are just figuring out, hey, we're not as good as we thought we were at wide receiver, right? The Houston Texans appear to have so many guys, and it becomes a situation where obviously we love depth, but if you can balance it out, because you're not going to ever play 7 wide receivers, it's just physically not possible, right? So would you be better off trading one of those guys to be able to unload something at another position that you can go ahead and utilize immediately? So I look at the Houston Texans wide receiver core and I say, DP, like, hey, this may be a potential trade situation, and that's why these guys want to perform well so they can get the eyes of people during preseason.
100%. I'm with you on that, Keith. And I think if he gets the opportunity to play more, the guy he reminds me a lot of is Kendrick Bourne. A guy that where speed may not be their biggest threat to you, but it's the body control, it's the route running, the short area quickness, it's the ability to get in and out of their breaks, and be at their spots, right? And just be reliable. And I think both of those guys, and Kendrick Bourne plays inside and out, and I think Xavier Hutchinson can do the same thing. And at worst, he could be a power slot for you where you get him matched up on smaller nickel corners where they might be able to run with him, but hey, I can lean my body on him. Just throw the ball in the paint. Just give me the alley-oop. I'm good. Or let me box these guys out. I think that's the career trajectory for him. And Kendrick Bourne's been a pretty solid playmaker when given the opportunity, especially for the New England Patriots.
Yeah, you made me think about this, but I mean, the New England Patriots are clearly one of those teams, right, where you're trying to kind of figure it out a little bit, right? To say, hey, if we don't have, we're trying to throw him in to a situation with even more young wide receivers, and then he may have an opportunity, because you're talking about Robert Woods and Stephon Diggs. He's still learning, certain situations where those guys are, like you said, wily vets, man. You trust them. They've been productive at a very high level for a very long time. He's not going to just outright supersede them immediately, and that's the reason why they're there. So I think it's going to make for a rather interesting conversation. DP, I want to continue to go through the Houston Texans. Just some of the things they have. Talk about the offensive tackle Blake Fisher, right? Like he's slated as a backup now because they have Titus Howard. Everybody thought that it was it was a balanced situation, right? Definitely great pick, because Blake Fisher was one of the more underrated players that I don't know why nobody just talked about him. We talked about Joe Out. We talked about other offensive tackles.
Not flashy, Keith. He just wasn't a flash. He just got the job done. Steady Eddie, man.
We talked about offensive tackles that was been drafted later than him. Like he wasn't in this. He wasn't in the high-end elite conversation. And then he was too good to be a sleeper, right? So he just fell in the between of nothing at all. Like nobody said anything about him. But talented guy. I gave him a second-round grade. I think he went in the second round. But I think it'd be a good showcase, a big showcase for him. I think it's a huge showcase for the Houston Texans. And the reason being is that he is probably a right tackle only, I would say, or you definitely with the Houston Texans, you're not moving left tackle because Laramie Tunsil's there. So his position is probably right tackle. You have veteran Titus Howard, right? So Blake Fisher goes out there, performs well. You feel comfortable what he can do. Who knows if you can offload Titus Howard, right? Because we know, like you said, you're going to have some situations to where people are going to get injured. You have other preseason games immediately following, right? So that way teams are kind of figuring out that their depth chart and their roster, maybe you can get something for Titus Howard.
100%, Keith. And I want to stay on the offensive side of the ball real quick before we transition to defense. Yep. Cade Stover at the tight end spot.
Oh,
man.
yeah.
We know Dalton Schultz. And this, you talk about a guy that went like just a pick that was not discussed much. It's like, yeah, they brought back Dalton Schultz. He was able to perform well, right? With the Texans, or with the Cowboys and with the Texans. When I look at Cade Stover, man, and this is a guy, I think I gave him a 3rd round grade, and he went in the 4th, right? 6'4", 251, former linebacker playing tight end. And you see that with the level of physicality he plays with. He's a really good run blocker. And this is a team that is you're going to see some 12 because they're going to run the ball, right? That Shanahan type of scheme. I don't know. I keep blanking on their offense coordinator name at the moment, but because he was not
Ben Slowick.
No, Bobby Slowick. Bobby
Slowick.
Yeah,
I was getting Ben Johnson and them together.
That would be one great offensive mind. You put those two minds together. Might be the best in the game. But no, I think with Bobby Slowick and coming from San Fran, you're going to see that stretch run game out of 12 and different things like that. And that's why I think he gets on the field. But also, he's a big target on the seam ball. So getting him up the seam, and he's so physical, not just as a run blocker, but then after the catch at 6'4", 251, you saw him stiff arm linebackers, run through linebackers, make safeties have to chop them down at the knees because they didn't want to tackle him up high. So I think that he has a real shot in this first preseason game to kind of showcase himself. Say, listen, if you don't want to keep Brevin Jordan, or if you keep Brevin Jordan for his athleticism, and then Dalton Schultz doesn't give you the ROI on the contract you gave him, now you have a younger option and a cheaper option as well. But Keith, quickly on the defensive side of the ball, a guy that is crazy, like he was the safety one around this time last year, Kalen Bullock out of USC. Now, we know Jimmy Ward's playing free safety. Jalen Petrie plays a strong. And having Kalen Bullock with his range, he had the best range at the safety position in the 2024 NFL draft. I was excited when he got drafted to this team with DeMeco Ryans, because I've seen what DeMeco has done with defensive backs, whether it's safeties or corners. I think he could really get a lot out of this young man, and we could potentially see some 3 safety sets if he earns his way onto the field.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm going to point out one guy real quick, and that's Kamari Lassiter. I know he's listed as a starter, but rookie-wise, I don't know if he's going to be listed as a starter, right? Like, you just don't know because they have 2 veterans and CJ Henderson and Jeffrey Okuda, and then you don't know if they're going to kick Kamari to the nickel or let him get a little bit of run.
They got Desmond King as well.
Yep. So definitely be a big time name to look out for when you're talking about as far as a guy kind of getting some reps, getting some runs. So we'll see what happens with Kamari Lassiter. But DP might be my favorite part of the show coming up right now, man. We about to talk about an interesting conversation right at the end of the day, and that is, should starters play in the Hall of Fame game? We talk about it. They had 4 games, they took 1 away, and then now it's only 2 teams each year that have that extra Hall of Fame game. So should starters play in the Hall of Fame game? We're gonna have this discussion coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Guys, I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sporting like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. And you can get in on the preseason odds for college football and the NFL in terms of betting, Heisman, MVP, playoffs, all of that good stuff. You can jump right on into it with FanDuel. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. Head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer, because FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. Keith, should starters play in the Hall of Fame game? I know fans say yes. Fans, it's the first taste of football in almost 200 days? Like,
yep.
You know what I mean? 180 days or something like that since the Super Bowl and everything. It's like, man, yeah, we got through the draft season. Then everything is cool when you got, rookie OTAs, you got mini camps. All right, football's still here. Then after mini camp, you hit that mid-June to that mid-July break, right? Where it's like a month, and you're like, I don't have any football in my life right now.
Nothing
so fans
to watch,
absolutely
nothing to watch.
Fans want to see the starters play. But Keith, how do you feel about this situation? Should the starters play in the Hall of Fame game, or should they keep it as status quo and say, you know what, let's let the backups do their thing?
Yeah, I think it's very dependent. I'll say this: all of my young guys should play. And I'll go to even this situation, right? Talking about the Chicago Bears, Caleb Williams not playing. I haven't seen any news that it's an injury, right? So if it's not an injury, then I think he should play. Even if it's just one drive, get out there, get your snap, get going, right? Like, just get acclimated, because it's so, I feel like you can't have it both ways, because you're going to tell me, I guess, what is the reason? Is that he's not ready, or you just don't want him to play? I think the best thing to do is to get your young guy the most reps if you plan on playing him in the regular season, right? So that way you can have correctable moments. But if you don't feel like he's ready, then how are you going to tell me he's going to be ready in 3 more weeks, right, to play week 1? Right. So I would play my quarterback, like, especially if I feel comfortable with, just to get him one drive. I think there's no reason not to let him play one drive, even if he hands the ball off 3 times and then get off the field. Get the jitter out, get comfortable. Hey, we good? You good? Okay, cool. Like, you felt that, you know how it is, NFL speed, we talked about it, and then be able to go from there. And then the other thing is like, could it potentially be a confidence booster in some way? And I think it potentially can. Like, if you have a set of scripted plays, then you have stuff that he can execute, he gets comfortable doing it, and then you pull him while he's on a high, right? Like, while he's feeling good about himself before his, all other confusion things. Now, the other side of that is this too, DP, is that you're able to accelerate the process of getting to the correctable mistakes. I think by getting them out there, right? Like, hey, did you see this? Like, now that he's out there, you can say, hey, did you see this protection? Why didn't you audible to this? Why didn't you change the play to this? Okay, you cool with that? All right, cool. Did you see the safety roll down high? Things like that. You can just get that process started of fixing it before it really counts. I get it that it doesn't count, but I think you should take advantage of it in certain situations of the fact that it doesn't count yet.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, especially as we see every year, the starters don't play in the Hall of Fame game, and it's like for me, I'm like, why not get the ball rolling, right? Okay, you're the one, you and the other team are the only two teams with quote unquote 4 preseason games, I guess you could say, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you don't have to play play the starters in all 4. You can play them a little bit in this game, play them mostly in week 2 and week 3. Then that final week, you let the guys who are battling for roster spots get their shine and get their spot in their moments to, hey, whether I'm a special team, a core special teamer, whether I'm a backup tight end, whatever, you let them decide the roster cuts in that game itself. But I think a lot of it at the same time too, Keith, is just fear of injuries, right? Like, man, first opportunity against the other players, that first opportunity to hit someone that's not their teammate. Might be a little bit too antsy. I don't want to expose you to hits this early. And it's like, are you going to expose him August 10th when he plays the Buffalo Bills? So it's like, you're exposing them either way.
Yeah, that conversation is tough, especially in football, because you just never knows what happens. You never know what happens, right? In the sense of the fact of it can be a self-inflicted injury, right? Like a non-contact injury, or it can be a play that nobody was expecting. There's just so many factors. You got you plus 21 other people on the field, plus just non-contact injuries, plus it's a physical sport on top of that, right? So it's just so many other things that can happen. And I think in football, period, you almost can't factor in injuries when you're talking about playing a guy and not playing a guy. It's one thing if a guy is hurt already, then you understand it. But like just a perfectly healthy football player and then saying I'm going to remove this from this guy, because you just don't know. And we've seen this like even with the wide receiver show, right? Like Justin Jefferson comes back, then immediately it's an entirely different injury. And it's like, I mean, that was just a big hit because he played a physical contact sport, right? Like that just is what it is. Nice. But yeah, I think my young guys, I'm definitely leaning towards them playing because I just want them to get out there and get used to it. And I think the earlier that you can get them acclimated to the in-game experience, the more comfortable that they will be. You almost want them, because I look at it as like, hey, instead of week 1 being the bright lights, week 1 you can be kind of hitting a stride a little bit, right? And understanding just how to go about certain things. So I would want them fully locked into, hey, what is your game preparation? How did you like it? Just all of those different things. And you already have -1 preseason game. So it's probably gonna be another 5-7 years before you're in the Hall of Fame game again, right? So that's just how that situation goes. But I'm all for them definitely, like I said, my young players getting the Hall of Fame game, getting those reps, so then that way we can get back come Tuesday morning, right, when we have corrections, get back to it and be able to make those corrections.
And that's such a great coaching point, Keith, because of some fact of, like you said, Tuesday film session, you actually got film to break down against another team rather than, okay, it's just practice film, or hey, we're getting ready for the next opponent. You are already like, you got enough snaps in the first game to say, all right, got a little blood flow going, we got a little juice flowing, got your feet wet. All right, now what did you see out here that caught you off guard that you didn't see from our defense in practice? What did they do that made you struggle, made you hesitate to throw the ball? What looks did they give you, right? And now we work on that, that we can practice leading into that preseason game. Because guess what? The Buffalo Bills, like, they're sitting there kind of cold. They're coming off the bench. They haven't played any preseason games yet. This is their first game. And now the whole thing for me is like, you're just trying to stack days and stack moments. And I think that's how you do that. But I know it's a slippery slope, because if a player gets hurt in the Hall of Fame game, fans will be like, why the F are we playing them in the Hall of Fame game? And I'm like, that's a fair point. I get what you're saying. But if he stays healthy and he showcases well, you're like, man, I'm excited. So it's a double-edged sword.
No, 100%, 100%. DP, That wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, man. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydays. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. If you can hear my voice, go ahead and hit that like button. Don't forget to comment, and then make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel over at Locked On NFL Draft, man. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. There right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson, and you can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we always like to say, man, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube. Wherever you listen to podcasts, get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydays. Guys, if you don't mind, please go to the audio podcast. Leave a 5-star review, comment, continue to help and support your boys over here on the Locked On NFL Draft podcast. And listen, on tomorrow's show, we're getting into Tyler Guyton, who is out there shining against Micah Parsons, one of the best edge rushers in the NFL. It seems like the Dallas Cowboys got them a young star on the offensive line. So we're going to talk about that on tomorrow's show. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow on Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.